Start now. Recording in progress. Here we go.
How about it?
All right. So y'all see my
What's
screen?
up? Happy 2023.
Oh my gosh, it is our first. This has been a long month.
Welcome to January.
It's just been the longest month ever.
Yeah, today we've got some amazing humans in here in the room with us, in their room, but in our virtual room with us. And as we're jumping on today in our first user group meeting for 2023, it's weird to say that. Curious if anyone's been doing any workbook reworks in the beginning of the year and what might prompt that. I had to do that, so that's why I asked. And
all those hard-coded 2022s that you all put in there, that was one of those things that you're now regretting, isn't it? And so, yes, let's use data-driven ways and so forth. I remember doing that vividly early in the early days. No bueno.
One of the fixes I had to do was it was a date filter for the last week, but it was on week, and then the week didn't exist, and it wasn't. Yeah, so I had to switch to date diff.
Ooh, and 53-week fiscal calendars are super fun too. That's another one. Anna, maybe you'll get into that. Can't wait. It's gonna be so fun. And I'm curious too, as y'all are all coming into the chat, like, I would love to conduct a little bit of an unscientific study. Like, if you are a New Year's resolution person, like, give us a thumbs up or something like that. And if you are like an ardent, I do not resolute to do anything, I'd love to, like, I want to see what the balance is. I am for the record, I am a no resolution person. I do not resolve to do anything.
We are so
I'm not
much alike.
because I think you should figure out who you want to be and then figure out what you want to do, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to do this in 2023. It's like, are you that kind of person? Is that why you're going to do it? So that's what I want.
I'm so with you on that. And my philosophy is the goals are great, but you should always be adjusting them, not just on January 1st.
Love it. I love it. Hey, we're getting a lot of thumbs down. You guys are my people.
I can tell you there's a lot of people that go to my gym, Lifetime in Woodstock, that are resolutioners. And I'm like, go get it. I'm cheering for them. Like, and I can tell you in the next month, I will have access to gym weights again, because that's just how it goes.
There you go. Y'all enjoy. And then we'll see you later.
Rooting for you. So I love seeing everyone jumping in here, and here we go. So let's talk some upcoming meetings. We've got another virtual coming up in February. For those of you who like virtual, we do want to see people in person. I miss people's faces. So March 16th, mark that one down. We will give you more information on that as it comes, but March 16th is in person. And then we've got another in person in August as well. So mark those down. In the meantime, we feel like we may adjust and shift that as it comes if we need to. So we'll let you know though. May, you'll notice there's not a date there, because guess what's coming in May? Another 3-day, not 2, 3-day in-person Tableau conference. We are back.
Hey, if you know you're going to go, like, drop that in the chat, because I'm super curious, like, who's planning on it, who's thinking about it, who's like, not going to happen. Like, so I'm definitely pumped. I think one of the reasons they heard some outcry on, like, really, you want us to fly to Vegas for 2 days? And so if I'd also be curious, like, if 3-day made a difference in your decision, that'd be interesting information too. So anyway, it's all about me learning about you all. I'm super curious.
I would like to go. I need to get my approval.
Interesting. We'll be having that conversation very soon. Love it.
Yeah, sounds like other people have that same, like, well, now that we have dates, now we have to have the conversations. So yeah, but I'm excited to see people in person. I want to do that. as well. All right.
Super fun.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and let's get talking about what we can do to stay plugged in. And I apologize. Like, I had a couple of emails this week about getting connected and how to get on a distribution list, and I meant to respond. So I apologize. I'm a little behind. But here's how. So we can, and Nelson, if you wouldn't mind grabbing some.
Done.
Yep, you did it. There you go. In chat, you can see, here's how you can join us. On LinkedIn, there's a group, and we'll talk a little bit more of that in a second. Twitter, YouTube. So this way you can just not just see us once a month, but we can actually get plugged in and have a conversation and keep it going. The other thing that we're asking is for if anybody wants to host a meeting or present. We love presenters. So you can grab our ear, email one of us. Let us know if you have a capacity somewhere for at least 150 people-ish to host in person. And then if you want to present whether virtual or in person, just let us know.
Yes. The community is still the community. We love the Tableau community at the end of the day. And so user groups are the heartbeat and will remain the heartbeat of the community for as long as we were all here. So 100%.
Yeah. And that said that we're going to keep this heartbeat going. And this join our team is for you guys right now. If you are looking for jobs or if you are hiring in the LinkedIn group, we can put those. So go ahead and join that group if you haven't already. And we can all support each other by looking towards that, who's hiring or you know, who's looking for a job in that LinkedIn group. So feel free to join the group, add that information, and of course, refer a buddy as well.
And if you're looking for, you know, Tableau folks or data folks, whatnot, throw it in the chat. That'll just give folks an opportunity to just see that that's happening, and y'all can follow up on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's awesome. So definitely take advantage of the platform.
I'll repost those links too. Here we go.
Yep. Ooh, I sent them to the panelists. That was
You did. I'll
awesome.
do it. There you go.
So sorry.
There we go. Thank you, Wendy, for calling that out.
Yes, thank you so much. Sorry about that, y'all.
All right. So yeah, as we were jumping on, we were talking about a little bit about, you know, the new year, maybe some Tableau workbook reworks, maybe what might prompt that. And so today we have some amazing presenters to help us through the aches and pains of what is the January, or at least beginning of the fiscal year, aches and pains here. So Nelson, take it away.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure to introduce Brandi Beals. Brandi is coming to us live from Wisconsin. Brandi, I almost said Milwaukee. Did I have that right? I think I have it right. Sweet. Love it. Brandi is a Tableau ambassador. She is a user group ambassador because she co-leads the Milwaukee Tableau user group and then the whole Tableau user group for Wisconsin. Brandi has been in the platform for about 10 years, which is awesome. Loves to focus on scalable data strategy, digs in on data literacy. And as a part of that data literacy, Brandi also leads the Data Book Club. And we were nerding out about that just a minute ago because we love to read around here too. So Brandi, we're super excited to have you. Welcome to the South. It's our pleasure to host you. We can't wait to have you lead us. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to come today and speak about how I created my resume in Tableau. So that's what I'm here to talk about. And I'll start sharing my screen and we can dive right in.
Love it.
Okay.
We got you. Go for it.
Excellent. Thanks. Okay, yeah, so I'm here to talk about building, you know, my Tableau resume, but to just expand a little bit on kind of a little bit about me. So I do have a day job, and I'm the manager of an analytics team for a financial services firm, and that that role is actually in IT. And so I do a lot both around Tableau server administration, but also around, educating other people who are using Tableau, providing a center of practice, and yeah, kind of thinking about strategy and literacy and all of those fun things. But in my free time, I love Tableau so much. It's also a hobby. And so I lead a few user groups, the Data Book Club. And because of those things, I think I'm lucky to be a Tableau ambassador. So it's a little bit about me. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn at Brandi Beals. And I have a website where I do some blogging as well. If you're interested in, learning more about I feel like I really like Tableau server because there's so many wonderful people doing amazing, wonderful, exciting things with Tableau desktop. Tableau server, I don't think it's a lot of love. And so I really like talking about how that tool can be useful to an organization. So if that's up your alley, check out my blog at brandibeals.com. But that's actually not even what I'm here to talk about. Today, it's really about talking about how I built my resume in Tableau. And so I'm going to kind of start by talking about how I was inspired or what inspired this, and then how I kind of went through the process of collecting my own data, how I organized and structured that data, and then how I went to visualize it. And then, as with most things that you build in Tableau, there's always opportunity to iterate, especially at the start of a new year, right? There's never something that I built 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago that I won't go back and improve now. So I want to say I'm about a year out from having created this resume. And so there's already things that I'm like, I'll change this and change that and change this. So, so iteration, it's always an element within the process. So that's how I kind of plan to go through this today. I'm a big fan of questions, of, that engagement. So I would love to hear your feedback or your thoughts. You're not going to hurt my feelings if you hate what I've done, or you would do it a different way. Everyone's perspectives are valid, so feel free to chime in. Okay, enough of the PowerPoint. Let's dive into my resume. So let's start first with what I've created. So this is the version I've created. There's actually a few variations. This is the one that's out on Tableau Public. And it looks very mysterious. And I feel like I kind of did that on purpose. Also, my undergrad degree is in art and economics. So there's the artistic side of me that's let's add something different and make it mysterious. So there's not any titles besides my name. We'll talk more about that. That's a artistic choice, but this is my resume. We're going to talk through the different components of it. So on this left-hand side, obviously my picture and some helpful links, but then this piece right here is my education and experience. So where I went to school, where I studied abroad, where some of my first jobs were, and then the length of the bar is obviously how long I've been there. And then some of my kind of extracurriculars. So that's what this is. This bit on the right, this spider graph, is basically a kind of different skills within the data lifecycle, like a data project lifecycle, if you will, but represented as a spider graph. So that's what this is. And then here we have skills almost. So we've got analytics, statistics, leadership, etc. Over here, these are technologies. So again, there's always room for improvement, but this is kind of where I've started or what I've initially created. And this down here are just different events that I'm involved in. So we're going to dive in deeper, but before we kind of take a look at how these elements were built, I want to show how the data was structured. So I have all my data in a Google Drive sheet. And I've got 4 different tabs because, you know, I feel like you kind of start with the basics, like what jobs you had, or maybe where you went to school or whatever, with start and end dates. So I have a category column that distinguishes between education or experience or something called extra professional, which is like extracurricular, except it's like professional stuff. And this is an actual word. I didn't know that. But extracurricular felt like too high school to me. So I wanted to, you know, have a distinction that it's a professional engagement, right? So professional is a word. And yeah, just, you know, what the organization was, what my role was, and then, you know, maybe the location, and then like start and end dates, and anything that is ongoing or current doesn't have an end date. So that's that. We then have skills and certifications. So, you know, I've been kind of slowly keeping track of all of the courses that I might have taken, if I have any certifications, if, you know, what products, like tools or technologies I'm comfortable with, languages. Coming up with categories sometimes can be difficult. And then this thing called life cycle, and this is actually what is used to create the spider graph, just these rows. But I'm kind of just using skills and certifications to collect all of that data. I'm giving myself a rank. So this is just self-reported. These ranks are just self-reported on a scale of 1 to 10. How good am I at this thing? For certifications and things of that nature, I've put like a date that certification was completed. So that is skills and certifications, relatively simple structure. For LinkedIn skills, so the bit where there's kind of like 2 bar charts and they're different skills, I will say, okay, with this skills and certifications, again, this information, these rankings are self-reported. I really didn't like that. I really didn't like me just arbitrarily deciding I am this good at this thing. I understand that that's important, but I wanted something that was like that wasn't up to me, right? That I could just collect data from somewhere that quantified my skills in a certain area. And so that's where, that's where the LinkedIn skills came in. So yeah, on my LinkedIn profile, I have a lot of endorsements for different things. And so I basically took that data, scraped that data off of LinkedIn and put that into this sheet here. And again, the categories, there's just 2. There's either a concept or like a technology and tool specifically. So a concept of like statistics or leadership are kind of in here with the different counts of endorsements, and then the same with technology. So you'll see Tableau's in here. So yeah, so that's the data. Oh, one other tab, events. So I've been leading the Milwaukee Tableau user group since 2015. Been involved in a lot of those meetings. I'll occasionally speak, like I am here. I started up the data book club. So all of those things are in here. And I'm just kind of tracking whether it's a speaking engagement, a data book club, whatever, who's it for, what the name of it is, what role I played, whether it was just like the host or whether I was a judge or whatever, and the date that occurred. And then I have like a, you know, obviously a column for URL. So that's the structure of my data. Again, feel free to, you know, ask any questions or post things in the chat, but hopefully that's like relatively straightforward. I did put these on 4 separate tabs because the data itself is just kind of so different. It just made sense. I've set them up as well in my Tableau workbook as 4 separate data sources. So let's jump over to Tableau desktop. Each of those different tabs is set up as a separate data source here. And I did that I guess like one of the places I'd like to iterate on is to actually relate these data sources in some way so that maybe when I click on this experience, I can see my skills at that time, or, you know, I can hover over the Tableau skill, and maybe that gets highlighted in the data lifecycle chart. So there's definitely opportunities to do that. The data model becomes more complex when that happens. So something I'm still working on. So if you guys have any suggestions or resources for me, I'd love to hear that. But that's how I'm currently setting everything up. So let's get to the fun stuff, which is how I actually built this. So this is the version I kind of currently have. The only difference is I now have some titles. Okay. So let's talk about each one of these things. I'll start with the events because I think this one's just easiest. So essentially, we've got our events data source with all those different fields. And all I have here is the date field on my column shelf. And this creates this x-axis. So every individual, and then actually, so on my detail shelf or on my tooltip, oh, you know what I did? This is what I did, because Tableau loves to aggregate things. I turned off under analysis, aggregate measures. I deselected this. So it's on by default, but I turned it off. I do the same thing when I create scatter plots. So this is essentially a one-dimensional scatter plot. And so every event, every individual event becomes its own independent dot along this axis, which is the date. Let's see, I also have a color here on whether something is a milestone or not. And this is just a set that I've created based on the event name. So essentially I went to event name, I right-clicked and went to create set, and I created this set. So let's take a look at what this one looks like. So essentially I just came in here and selected certain event names, and we're like, these are milestone events for me. So like this security training and governance, oh my, this is when I presented at the Tableau conference. It's something I'm like really proud of. So that becomes like a milestone event. So, and actually I would say this one is too. So once I have that, that goes on the color shelf, and that's just what distinguishes these pink circles from the others. Okay. And I've added some information. So I've added today to the detail shelf, and then a lot of information to the tooltip, so that when I hover over any of these things, I get additional information about, you know, what the event was, who it was for, what the date was, where, you know, where it was, things like that. And then on some of these, let's actually just take a look at the tooltip. Where did my tooltip go? Okay, so I've got event name, event category, you know, group, role, date, location, and then this URL option text. And so URL option text is actually a calculated field over here. And I believe all this is just text that says like, okay, if the URL is null, return null. Otherwise, if there's something in that URL column, we want to add some text that says click for more information. Because not everything has a URL, like this one, no URL for this. But some of these have a URL. And so if I click, okay, when I'm on the dashboard and I click one of those, it actually takes me out to any sort of supplementary information that there might be. So it could be a recording from that user group meeting, for example. So that's the events tab. The next thing is like the top 10, both concepts and top 10 technologies. So These are pretty simple because they're just bar charts. But kind of fancy bar charts, I suppose. Fancy for me, at least. So the first thing is I've got my skills, and I've added the skill category to the filter shelf. And here I'm only filtering on the concepts, but I've added this filter to context. So when you right click on a filter, you can add a filter to context, or when it's already in context, you can remove it from context. So context filter is this gray color, and essentially that filter gets applied first, and then all the other filters get applied. And the reason I need to do that is because I want the top 10 concepts. So concept needs to be applied first and then top 10 skills. If I didn't have it in context, then I'd only be given 7 skills would be returned, because out of the top 10 skills, only 7 are within that concept category. So if I want top 10 concepts, I have to add concept to context. And then this is actually so I like to hide the headers sometimes, but in this case, maybe it's good that they're out. Again, iteration. Can always go back and improve upon this, but I'm doing I'm doing a little bit of a hack here to say, okay, take the number of endorsements. That's going to create this basically point at the end, and then take this calculated field that's basically the minimum, like basically it's saying give me a point at 0. So we've got 0, and we've got the number of LinkedIn endorsements, and then they're connected by a single line, and that's what creates the rounded bar chart. So it's a bar chart, but if you want rounded corners, you have to go through this hassle. So it's just a hassle, I guess, I wanted to go through, but I've done that for top 10 concepts and top 10 technologies. So they're both set up exactly the same. And I'm going to just turn off the header here. Let's jump over to, so I'm just going to jump back to the resume real quick. So there we go. So we've got the events, right? All sorts of stuff down here. You can even filter on them if you want. Because I feel like I don't really have a great answer for this, but all of these events at the end here, the more recent events, there's just so many that it might be helpful, to potentially zoom in on something. So I don't know, I still need to figure that out, but you can filter in on those. We've talked about the expertise or the different concepts and the technologies that I have experience in. I want to then talk about this kind of Gantt chart. So it's very similar to the expertise and technologies in that they're rounded bar charts. I use the same kind of concept, but it's a bit more of like Gantt chart style. So the different starting points are different. They don't all start at 0. And so one of my favorite tips is to use something called the caption card. So I don't know how many people know about the caption card, but I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. I'm going to jump back to top 10 concepts to show you the caption card, and then we'll come back here. So when you are on your sheet and you right click anywhere in this gray background, you have these cards like the title or caption or summary. So the summary, for example, if you have a lot of measures, the summary will kind of tell you what the average or the min max is. And you can even add additional information if you're like really nerdy and you're like, I want to understand the kurtosis on my data, or what the first and third quartiles are, but I don't want to create a box plot. You can get all that summary statistics from that summary card. But similarly, there's something called the caption card. So here it's already enabled, but it's not enabled by default. But the caption essentially is Tableau's way of describing your chart in like a dynamic automated way. Okay, so this is saying it's the trend of LinkedIn endorsements, and it's saying trend because this is a line chart of LinkedIn endorsements and minimum 0 for LinkedIn skill, right? And it tells you that it's keeping just the concept and it's filtered on the top 10. This is okay, but it's really not great. So what I usually do is I'll actually repurpose the caption card to leave myself notes like here. So you can double click on this and it becomes a text editor, just like, your tooltip or just like your title. So I actually put in here an article on how to do a rounded Gantt chart. Because I don't know. I mean, I have confidence that I could have figured it out, but if other people have done it, like, lean on them. So somebody else has figured out how to do this. I referenced their kind of blog post and I did it myself, but then I will add additional notes. So like when I dig into it and I figure out like what's going on, I like to leave myself notes because then I can save myself time in the future. So essentially this rounded Gantt chart, takes advantage of the line path concept the same way that we did in top 10 concepts. But in this case, it's calculating the difference between like an arbitrary date and the start date. And then these are kind of used to create these different points. So we've got a start date, we've got an end date that have been calculated, and then the line literally just connects the two. And I made it vertical as opposed to horizontal. I don't know, probably because I like the way it fit. I feel like it was more consolidated and condensed and I had more vertical space to work with. So, so I really love using the caption card. And then, yeah, I just like with the top 10 skills, I just added information into the tooltips so you can hover over here and get more information about each of these different elements. One thing I'll note real quick is this is the calculation that creates the end date. The start date is very similar, but this just calculates the number of days between, again, an arbitrary start date, in this case, 7/1/2005, and the end date. And that just kind of determines when the axis begins. Okay, and then if the end date is null, it uses today. So the job I currently have will still have an end date of today, right? And then one last thing that's kind of similar is, again, this is my current job that I have, and I started in January 2015, and it goes to present. So I created a calculated field that's relatively simple that just says like, hey, if the end date is null, use the word present. Otherwise, format the date in this specific way. Because I wanted it to say like March 2015. So anyway, that's pretty much how I created this one. It was, again, relatively simple. Well, and I have activity date too going across the top so that the different bars aren't, running into one another. Yeah, color would absolutely help here. We could absolutely do that. I think that's category. So we could definitely do something like that if that were helpful. Yeah. I was also, I love the idea of little icons too, like a diploma or, books or something for education versus a job being something else. So yeah, absolutely it would. My problem, honestly, is that I just love black. I really like to keep things very minimalist, but color would be great. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I don't know. I honestly, I gotta be honest. This felt like more a combination of not only like I finally wanted to do my resume in Tableau, but also an exercise. Like this isn't a very serious project. It's just was like a fun thing for me personally, that I wanted to almost push the boundaries of like minimalism, which is why the version that's out in Tableau Public, like there's literally no text besides my name. I should even just remove that, honestly. So it's more, it feels a little bit more like art than anything, but yeah, color would probably be helpful. Color is interesting, right? Because I like to use a consistent color scheme across the entire thing I'm doing. And you know, if I color that, then I can't color something else, it feels like. So definitely room for improvement. So the last chart I wanted to touch on is this kind of spider graph. You know, honestly, I love a bar chart. If I had to pick a favorite, it would be the bar chart. They're just so versatile. But I didn't want a bunch of bar charts. I wanted something to kind of make it stand out. And that's not probably the best way to go about visualizing your data, but again, for more of an artistic perspective, that's what I wanted to do. So so I thought, again, you know, taking my skills and putting them into like a, you know, like a data analytics project lifecycle type of, you know, chart kind of just made sense to me. Now, you know, maybe it would be better with a different graphic in the background, but that's essentially what I did. There were two articles I found particularly helpful. The first was this one by Ken Flerledge, who talked about radar charts. And it's a very flexible tool, but I almost found the flexibility to be daunting. So I used Ken's blog post to create the image that I'm using in the background here, but then this other post I used to kind of do my own calculations. So essentially there is the, in this case, the polygon. So that's this kind of dark gray shaded place. And this is just the life cycle path calculation, which just kind of says, you know, what the different points are. So we've got business understanding, data mining, prep, EDA, feature engineering modeling, and data visualization. So we've got 7 different points here. And then we have, in this case, a dual axis chart. So our Y coordinate is duplicated in order to then have the circles. So the circles are an independent kind of mark type. And here we use, again, the life cycle path. And then the life cycle X and life cycle Y are obviously the things that create the X and Y coordinates. And this math is what I learned from this first blog post that's listed here. So it's the cosine of the radian multiplied by the rank. And then for Y, it is the sine of the radian multiplied by the rank. And the radian is this wonderful thing. So again, all of this math was not something I figured out on my own. I learned from other people and pulled it together. And I kind of just, again, simplified it for my purposes. So this is definitely customized to me because I knew I only had 7 categories. I wasn't trying to make my chart dynamic the way Ken outlines. But anyway, so again, kind of using the caption card to leave myself little clues if I ever need to go back. But generally, it's relatively simple. So the one thing I'll say here is this is a scatter plot. We've got 2 measures on both the column shelf and the row shelf, creating 2 axes. And so because it's a scatter plot, or kind of like a map almost, under the map menu, I actually have a background image being used here. I think, no, that's not it. So I have a background image here. Again, this image was generated using Ken's blog post. But I just come in here, I define, what the starting points are. And I just kind of did this through trial and error. So I uploaded the image and I just said, okay, here's, kind of where it starts in relation to the X and Y measures that have been calculated here. So again, just kind of trial and error. So that's how I created that chart. And again, I'm really interested in taking this to the next level, probably adding a little bit more context back into it. I think I went a little extreme with just kind of removing everything. But I also think it would be interesting to show a little bit more that this is a life cycle, maybe not the spider web look, but maybe just like a circle type of thing. I'm not really sure. So I'm open to feedback, but that's how I went about creating my resume. Really collecting that data was the first step, figuring out what I really wanted to highlight, and then building charts to do that, to kind of reflect what I wanted to. Again, I think we all have, ways that we can make improvements on our stuff. I would probably remove the events chart. It's just too much detail given the rest of the detail that's on here. So anyway, that's my resume. I had one other thing I just wanted to go back to my slide deck, but before I do wrap up, were there any questions?
Yeah, I jumped in to see if there's any questions that people want to add to the chat or the Q&A.
Yeah, okay. And I've been keeping an eye on the Q&A, but not, or on the chat, but not the Q&A. So thank you for the commentary so far. The last thing I'll just close out with, first of all, I'll send you this deck, not that there's a lot to it, but I will link to, and actually, I'll just post it in the chat. I'll link to my resume because you can download it if you want to and kind of reverse engineer and take a look at some of the stuff. But I also wrote a blog post about kind of what I did. So I'll share those things. The last thing I just wanted to mention, sorry, would you share this with your employers? Yeah, I would absolutely do that. I think what's kind of cool, theoretically, I like having a distinction between the type of content I share on LinkedIn, on my LinkedIn profile. I don't really list out my individual responsibilities because those become like super out of date and then you can't really customize them to the job you're applying for. So then I have my actual paper resume, my traditional resume, that has a lot more detail. I have different versions of it depending on, what I might be applying for. But I think the Tableau version is nice because there's just things that, like all the events that I'm engaged in that I can't put on I would never put that on a resume or even on LinkedIn. So it's kind of, that part's kind of cool to show, or to even show the LinkedIn endorsements and, the data, like the life cycle stuff. Like those are just things, like it's just a different perspective. So I would totally be open to sharing it with employers. Great question. So the last thing I just wanted to leave you with is I've mentioned the Data Book Club, but I wanted to welcome you all to join us. So it is, it started during the pandemic because I was missing the in-person networking, right, that I had with my user groups. I was missing that. And I was just kind of like, okay, how can I get people together to like just chat about something? But, in my mind, I'm like, it always has to be productive. So I was like, let's find a book and read a book together. And it's data related, always. And anyway, so we get together once in a while we're reading a book and just chat about it. So if you're ever like in need of motivation for reading some books, or you just kind of want to have some more networking, highly recommend you come. It's super, there's like no commitment. So you can sign up and then like never attend. You can sign up and buy the book and then, come to the first meeting and never again. We have We read 4 books a year. So this winter, we're reading You Look Like a Thing and I Love You. It's about AI. It's a really cool, funny read. We haven't even had our first meeting yet. So if you're interested, I would say sign up, buy the book, start reading, and then join us on Slack and at our meetings. But it's just kind of fun. So
I love this. This is so cool. Big fan of using books to build community. And it, at minimum, you will, whether you agree or disagree with the book, whether you agree or disagree with the people that you're reading the book with, you will have a great conversation, and you'll ultimately learn something. So super cool. And you were telling me a little bit about this book. I'm fascinated. So I may have to join you. So anyway, Brandi, the other thing that I would comment on, I love that you have gone to a super extreme when it comes to the way that you've chosen to visualize this data, which is there's no text, there's no color. And I'm sure that there are people that are like, ooh, I see what you did there. Like, I may not love it, but I love that there's and so what I love is at the end of the day, like you are on a spectrum of, highly simplified, not that it's not rich in insight, not that there's not information, but what you're basically like, hey, I'm going all the way over here just to show you what it looks like. And I love that, because I wouldn't do it that way, but I love seeing it.
Yeah, exactly. Again, I think that's the great thing about, like, especially doing things in Tableau Public, is you can explore that. But I think the other thing is, like, so often your resume is something that you can just read on a piece of paper. I wanted people to explore that. And so by removing all the text, you have to hover on things to figure out what that is. So anyway.
What I liked about it, and honestly, I love it. My mind was blown to do it that way, because it's funny, my undergrad was packed full of economics, love economics, great, but not art. And I don't think that way. So when I was looking at it, I was thinking, gosh, what a way to also show how you are able to think analytically in multiple different ways and also be artistic in the same time. I mean, just incredible.
Well, thank you. That's really wonderful. Thank you guys for having me, again, for asking such great questions. Hopefully it was kind of exciting, or at the very least, very different, right? So yeah, thank you.
That was great. I like that you also showed the calculations. That's really helpful when someone's like, how would you even do that?
Yeah. Well, again, I did not come up with these, right? I'm standing on the shoulders of others, and I highly recommend that, right? People have done amazing things. Just take what they've done and give credit where credit is due, and that's it.
Steal like an artist. Love it.
Yeah.
We may have some more time for questions in chat at the end. We are going to shift now to the next presentation. Thank you so much, Brandi. And I'm honestly very excited to introduce Anna Kisting. Not just that because someone walks in the room and says Anna, and we're both like, yes. But also she's my friend. It's amazing to have a friend like Anna who will text me and go, are you running right now? So she's a runner. She's an avid runner. She also hikes the Appalachian Trail with her entire family and dog, and builds boats in her driveway. The really cool thing about her, though, and why she's here today, is because she has she's a phenomenal background in Tableau and analytics in general. So she works at Analytic Vision as a solution architect. And in her previous job, she created, and actually, Anna, one day you and I are going to sit down and talk about this, because I want to know more about the data viz platform that you created for your last job, so that people all over, I think it was all over the United States, can find out some information for themselves to make decisions in their community, health related, right? And I'm going to let you take it away. And I don't even know how to properly introduce you, because I mean, honestly, it would be a 45-minute presentation.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Hi, I'm Anna. I'd have to say that my ideal date is YYYYMMDD. At the end of a long day, I love to sit down by the fire crack open a can of wine, and spend time with what matters the most to me. And that is a laptop with a full battery and a clean data set with dates in it. Year, quarter, month, day, I love them all. And if this sounds like a perfect evening for you, then you should stick around. And I think that we would be great friends. So all joking aside, and I was going to try to keep that up for this whole presentation, but like I get way too excited about dates, so I don't think that I could. So numbers by themselves are generally pretty meaningless. So for example, if I said that you had $5 million in sales last year, you really don't have any idea if that's something to celebrate. But if you can anchor that to another number, say you had 5 million this year and 3.2 million in sales last year, you can now know that that is something to celebrate. And so often when you're getting into analytics, anchoring from one point in time to another place is a great way to start and provide context to your audience. So let's start talking about dating. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so when you're looking at dates with Tableau, and this is just the Superstore data, you can all access it. There's lots of different calculations that can help you calculate dates in chunks and also differences between different dates. So the three kind of basic calculations for dating is date chunk, date name, and date part. So date chunk basically puts if you're using like the month calculation, for example, it puts everything at the beginning of the month. So this is the calculation I used up here, date chunk, month, and then order date. And you can see down here that everything is at the first of the month. If I use date name, that does not, well, and also I'm going to back up. It does include year over here. So this would allow you to look at January 21, February 21, all the way forward. If you look at date name or date part, these produce either the name of the month or the number, the integer of that month. And so this would allow you to group Januaries together and Februaries together, and regardless of years. And so date part, you can also use a calculation that looks at month, is the same thing, only instead of producing the name of the month, it produces an integer. So with just these basic calculations, what can we do with them? So one of the things that I've used in lots of different scenarios before is just a straight up heat map. And this can tell you what your sales or your orders look like on different months or different days of the week. So if we drop in order date to the columns here, and we're going to select weekday, that puts them in Sunday through Saturday all the way through. If we drop in order date here on rows, you can see it drops it all the way down, and we can convert this one into month. So now we can see January here in rows and the weekday in columns. So if we drop in sales here, we put this in color, we change this here, and it moved it, of course. So dropping in sales into the color and putting in the label and changing this into a square / heat map allows us to see a heat map of when, hang on a second, let me see if I can move this around. There it is. A heat map of when the sales happen. So you can see that on Tuesdays in October, you have the least amount of sales. And in September, Thursday through Saturday, you were having a lot, but generally your sales occur on Thursdays all the way over here into Mondays. And this can be really helpful if we're doing staffing, if you're looking at, when you need to put in extra people to do shipping or whatever that is. This is a great way to get started with looking at what's happening in a broad picture of your business. So another awesome thing you can do with this would be a year over year comparison. So again, if we just drop in order date into the columns, and we're going to convert this to months, and then we're going to put sales here. for clarity, we're going to do a calculation to do running total of sales. So I'm going to switch my sales to be a running total. And then I'm going to drop in order date here. And I'm going to convert this into year and put it into color. So now I can see a running total of sales from 2019 to 2022. And you can kind of see how your sales can compare in a year-over-year view. So we talked a little bit before about, not wanting to hard code in years, and why if you've done that right now, you're really regretting that you did. I personally have done that. It's super fun. So what you can do is create a calculated field, and I will have it that only shows the last 2 years. So what this does is looks at the year of the order date, and we'll just start off here, and sees if it is the exact same as the max order date. So let's just start with that one part here. And we're going to put that into true. Well, actually, we're going to, so you can have a better view here. So it puts in 2022 into its own view. So it's capturing that. So when 2023 data comes, it's going to include that same thing. So we go back into our view. It just says, is the max year of this the same as the previous, as the year in the thing, in the data set? If we want to include the year prior to that, we use a calculation called date add. And I'm going to give you a little bit more information on that in just a second. And so this says if the year is the same as the previous year, then also include that as the Boolean true false statement. So if I click OK, yes, now 2021 has moved into the true. So if this is a view that I'm doing for my boss, I can include this to just say true. And every year, as more and more data comes, it will automatically update this. Let's take a deeper look at what the date add actually does. So the calculation that I use here in the example is date add, and in quotes here is what you want, the time interval that you want to add. So you can use day, month, year, and it will add in that amount of time to your original date. And so in this case, I want to add 1 day to the order date. So you can see here, the original date was the 3rd, and then I added 1 date and it got into the 4th. The kind of sister calculation to this is date diff, and this calculates the difference of days in between 2 dates. So again, date diff, the integer or the measure of time that you want to know that shows up between those two is day. And so you want to know the number of days between order date and ship date. So here we have order date of the 3rd, ship date of the 7th, and the difference between that is 4. So you can see all of these all the way down. And so back here on this calculation, we used that date add to say, so we have the same calculation of the max date add minus year. So what was the second most recent year? And that is, and if the current year is equal to that, then include that in the calculation. So I'm not watching the chat. And so if you have any questions on that, I'm hoping Anna or Nelson will jump in to this. No? Okay. So anytime that you're using date in anything, you absolutely positively have to understand your dates, how often it's being updated, the cadence that it's being updated, because what will inevitably happen if you don't understand that is that you'll show half of a month of March compared to a full month of February, and then your boss will wonder why like everything tanked, and you'll go back and realize it's just you don't have a full month showing. You don't have a full month of data in the data set. So a way that we can filter out and just show months that have a full date, there's a calculation we can do. And whenever I'm playing with calculations and making sure I have it set up, I like to just put the date on the rows and have them all the way filled in so that I can, go through and make sure that the calculation that I'm filling in works. So I'm going to go here and we're going to create a field called full months. And I'm going to. So what this field does, and I will figure out a way to distribute this workbook if it's useful to people. This says, I want to add in, here, we'll work from our way all the way in, like it's nested in like, math class in high school. And so we want to date trunk the month, the date to the month. So we want to put all of the dates in at the first of the month. And so that would list all of the dates as March 1st, February 1st, etc. And so then on that date trunk, you want to add into the next month. So if the original date was March, we wanted to show April, the following month. Okay, you with me so far? And then we want to subtract 1 day. And so that would give you the last day of the month for the order date. So it would show you February 28th, May 31st, whatever the last day is, because each month, 30, 31 days, 28, 29, whatever. So you don't want to have to manually code that in, especially with leap years. So it's asking what that is, and it's calculating in that date. And then it's asking you if it is less than or equal to the max date that is here. And let me show you what that looks like. Go all the way down here. So for October, we only have data through the 22nd. And so this calculation says all of this September data, just don't, it's not, there's not a full month here, but all of these other dates, we have a full month of this data. So as this data would get updated and as we get the rest of October's data here, we would be able to have a full month view here. So this is a calculation I use all the time. You can use it with week or year or whatever you want to use, and this allows you to just compare full sets of time periods to each other. Oh, hang on. So the other calculation that I do quite a bit is looking at last year to date to this year to date. So if we're thinking about this data again, we have data through the end of October. And so I want to compare 2022 data through, I guess it was to the 20th of October to 2021 data through October, because I want to see how those two time periods are comparing. So let me pull up that calculation. Dropping the order date back on rows. Okay, so what we're doing here is that same kind of calculation with max order date to see if the date difference between max order date and the actual order date equals 0, or you could just say if it equals the same, and order date is less than the max order date, then it is the year to date, versus that same calculation minus 1, which would give you the previous year. And I'm going to go ahead and put that here into columns. And I'm going to scroll down so you can kind of see what this looks like. So we only have data through the 20th of October. I'm going to make this bigger. Year to date. So we scroll up. It's going to show all of 2022 data. So this data here, we don't have data for our 2022 in December. So it's not going to assign those anything. But here, when I have 2021 from the 20th, it's going to start putting it into last year's to date. So this allows you to compare last year's current data to this year's current data. And a thing that I really like to do, bullet charts are my favorite data set. And I'm going to kind of go a little quickly here because I want to cover a really cool thing, is looking at a current time period compared to a prior time period. So we have our year to date and our last year to date already defined. And if we create a calculated field of current year to date, and if we do if, how did I name that? Filter to last date. I'm saying if the filter, the calculated field that we just did equals year to date, then I want to know what the sales are. So if we go ahead and click OK, and we drop in this here to current sales, actually, we're going to put it into columns. And then if I'm going to duplicate this, and I want to look at the prior year to date. And we'll change this to last year to date, then sales. All right, so let's drop this in here to the detail tab. And on rows, we're going to put in subcategories. So you can get kind of a view of the sales year to date of the by subcategory. And then for the analytics, I'm going to go into creating a reference line by cell. And I'm going to select the prior year to date and then click OK. And now you can see the bar is the current time period, and then the line is the prior time period. We could even get a little bit fancy with colors. Date. And then you can have, have a nice view of full color range here of, the subcategories that have decreased the most and the ones that have increased the most from those two time periods. So I've created this view lots of times. It's a really useful view to compare this compared to that. But inevitably, every single time that I compare it to, you start off with current year to date versus last year to date, this month versus last month, this quarter versus that quarter. And then I've created parameters where people can select each of those different options. But inevitably, somebody's going to come and say, well, I want to compare June and July to August and September because we created a new marketing campaign and I want to know if that marketing campaign had any impact or whatever random date is. And so at first I was creating this, parameters that were like these ridiculously long, every single possible option that was available to them. And suddenly it was like, I don't have time for this. This isn't going to work. So what I did, and we'll go through this very quickly, is, and I'll show you what it actually looks like over here, is allow people to self-select dates. So I created a calendar, and I'll go through all of these steps with you, where people can select whatever they want for the current date, and then they can select whatever they want for the prior date, and it'll automatically select. And then you select the first date and then the second date, and it'll group those together. When you select a third date, it will clear the cache and it will select that. It'll have that new view for you. You can select any order that you want it to be in, and it automatically updates. So we're going to go through how to build this. Hopefully. Okay. So the first thing that you want to do is create a calendar view. And to do that, we're going to create a trellis chart axis. And I did not come up with the math on these trellis charts. If you Google it, There's lots of different people who have done the math on these trellis charts. Okay. Okay, and then we need to, hang on a second. We need to put in year, order date by month, and then the order date by year. And we're going to put the year up here, and then we're going to calculate this using the month of order date. Discrete. And then we're going to turn this into label here. Okay. So this just makes the view. We will come back to this and we will clean this up. Now we're going to create a parameter, because in order to have, we can't use filters on this because you have to be able to have a separate place for the current date and the prior date. And if we use filters, then it'll filter out both of those. So we're just going to create a parameter that is a string, and we're going to create it. That is called current date. Current selected is actually what we're going to do. Now we need to create, oh, I already have it correct from before. Great, we're going to use the one I already have. Now we're going to create an action parameter to update the parameter in our dashboard. Okay. So what this parameter is doing is it looks at the length of what's currently in that parameter. If the length is less than 15, then it adds whatever you selected to the parameter. So it includes what's currently in the parameter and what's previous in the parameter. Otherwise, it just puts what's in the parameter. So this is how we get that third date to be deleted and like start over fresh when after people select the first date or the second date. Click OK. We're going to put the parameter update in here. Okay. Now we're going to put this onto the view. Date selection. Nope, not that one. Here we go. So what we want to do next is create a parameter action. Where is that? Actions. There we go. Remove all of these. Okay. So it actually already exists because I had built this out before I cleaned it out. So on that worksheet, anytime you hit it, we want it to update the current selected parameter. Click OK. Okay, let's go ahead and add in that parameter so you can see what's happening. Current selected. So when I click on November, it shows you November. When I click on February, it adds in February. When I click on August, it deletes August. And it deletes the other two and just adds August. So you can kind of see what's happening with those two dates. So the next thing that we're going to do is we want to be able to pull out those fields from those parameter fields and create a date from it. We're going to go back into our tried and trusty way of listing the order date. And then we're going to put in the current selected parameter so we can see what that is. And then we are going to create some dates. And I'm starting to run out of time, so I'm going to have to go faster here. Okay, so what this is doing, very high level, is you are, I'm going to delete all this first. It is looking for the characters in a certain place that are based on when this little tilde is selected. So let's just go ahead and put that in for right now to show you. So right now it's just pulling in the 2021 date, but let me put in the whole thing so you can see what it looks like. Let's put in the actual exact date and discrete. So this pulls in whatever it is, the first date. I'm going to go back in here. And so because people can select the first date, second, you don't know if somebody's going to select the end date first or the beginning date first. It is also calculating whether or not the date is before or after and the length of all of these different things. So you have this for date 1, and then we are also going to do the same thing for the second date that's in there. Duplicate. To put that in here as an exact date and discrete. Okay, so you can see here that it's putting these things into an actual date format for your date 1 and then your date 2. Go down in here, and then we want to be able to color your view, and I'm going to switch back over here to the actual thing rather than putting in this. I'm going to go through the steps here. So this calculation allows you to select to have the gray versus the blue. If the date is within the date range and before and after the date range, go ahead and color it. Otherwise, leave it gray. And I also use this same calculation to populate the bar chart. So if that color is selected, then show me sales. And so the end result here is this view. And I created it using the exact same lines and the bars here. The only other kind of magic that I added into this view is that I added a highlight so that it overrides selecting fields, and so it always looks the exact same on the view. And I know I went really fast, but I wanted to share this really cool thing with you, and I will share this workbook with you so that you can go through and get through all of this yourself. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Anna, any questions? Were there any? I didn't watch the chat at all.
Yeah, let's see here. We got some questions. That was amazing. Great job. The parameter is, it blows my mind. I think that's I can think of so many use cases for that. All right. So there were a few that we had some responses in the chat. So the one in the Q&A, it says, if let's say date add month +1 and the month is 12, will it shift to the next year? So
Yes.
using date add, will you shift? That's actually a great question, because are you just going to go back to any arbitrary January? Good question. Then the answer is yes. Let's see.
And I see Mary asked, could you use today instead of max date? The answer is yes. I never do, because my data is rarely has today's data. So I almost always want to look at the most recent date of the data. So the answer is 100% yes. But again, you have to know your data and what you want to do to be able to make that switch.
I love that answer, because you're so spot on. Like if you're not getting real-time data and the data is not streaming in right now, then today you know, and you may also on purpose do like today -1 so that you always get yesterday because you know today's going to be incomplete, right? And so I love the answer. It's contextual. And your data may be spotty too, right? You may only get data on Tuesdays for some reason. Okay, cool.
Let's see. I think that's more good there. Let me share my screen.
And
I forgot to stop my treadmill. I was walking and talking and forgotten to stop my treadmill. And so, yeah, that's why I was just kind of standing here walking. We're going to say,
and I love that you went heavy on kind of the LODs. And I think one of the other things that's super cool is there are also really good use cases. And I think you touched on a little bit, but where the table calcs for kind of using like last and first and a couple of those things are also really interesting too. And like, you know, you could have a whole nother conversation on like even the different approaches to why you would do LOD versus table calc and like, what does that help? And what does that also make annoying? And so it's like, this is one of those topics that I think you could dig in on for a ton of time.
I have enough for like an hour and a half, and Anna Ford told me that I needed to cut. And so anyway, I could literally talk about this all day long.
I love it.
With vigor.
And
that's the best part.
I think you alluded to this. You're going to make this workbook shareable, correct?
Yes.
Because when she and I talked offline before, I said, I want this. I want this as a reference. I think a lot of people would. Let's see if anyone has a question in the chat here. Any others?
Well,
trying to do both.
While we're looking at the chat, one of the other things I would say too is go ahead, Greg. I love it. Hop on in, bud.
Yeah, it looks like you have your hand up.
You there in the back.
Half. I'm not sure. Let's see. How do we do this?
I let him talk. It looks like he's unmuted.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, ask to unmute is what I'm pressing.
Greg, is that working? Throw it in the chat if not. And I also love the way you opened. I
all in, right?
Somebody else in there was like, you know, what's your ideal date? And it was like, you know, April 25th. It's not too warm. It's not too cold. It's springtime, the whole thing, right? And it's like, yeah, long walks on the beach is what I was really going for, but that's okay.
Yeah, Greg, it may not let you unmute, so you may have to put a.
I wonder if we have to make him a panelist in order to.
Yeah, I don't think we have that control, so we may have to. I think that's why we have to do the Q&A chat. We have been able to do it in the past, so I'm not sure how to do this.
I wonder if that's my fault. I promoted him to a panelist.
Oh, there you go. Oh, power.
There we go. So Greg, let us know if you figure that out. One of the other things while Greg's potentially getting that figured out, I've also, I think one of the things that's super interesting when it comes to dates is when you kind of are going beyond your Tableau workbook. I've also seen like, you know, organizations build literally just here are all the dates from 1999 to 2020, not even 20, 2199 type of stuff, right? And here's all of our 53-week fiscals. Here's what week of the quarter it is. Here's here's the same day last year, and it creates a nobody's trying to make it up on the spot type of thing. And then all you do is you basically join that table to whatever date, whatever data you have, right? And so now your year over year is going to be, well, did you convert for this? And did you do that? It's like, nope, it's all pre-thought. It's all there. And so like, again, there is a solution at every level of scalability and enterprise-ness of this. And so anyway, I've seen so many different amazing solutions to solving dates because they're really tricky. And I love the presentation because it's such a pain point in so many places.
So timely.
I see what I did. Anna Ford, she'll be here all week, ladies and gentlemen. Tip your waitresses and waiters on the way out the door. That was fantastic. I love it. Hey, before we go, I do think it's worth addressing, Tableau has been in the news, and, for, in some ways, not the best reasons. And yet, as we were talking about, I think the resume conversation we had earlier today is a great one because we want to be helpful to the community. I know there are still plenty of organizations that are hiring in this space. We're one of them. And so we're looking for folks that are both part-time and full-time. So that can be a thing. I'm not trying to plug any one organization. I'm just trying to say, like, don't get fearful in a time like this. The other thing that I would say too is the folks that are using data to create valuable insight, there will always be a place for those folks because there's just not enough people doing that. And I wrote a blog post earlier today on LinkedIn that basically just said it's not data's fault that we haven't realized all the value. And so my encouragement is if you're out there and you're making something that's valuable and you're moving the needle forward for your organization, my hope is that there'll be a place for you a long, long time. And so I think ultimately there's a lack of vision in some form and fashion. It's maybe cloudy in the Salesforce ecosystem. And so we'll see what happens. I still have a lot of faith in this platform. I still think visualizing data and helping people to see and understand it is really, really valuable. And so I'm encouraged. I remain optimistic and hopeful. And yet this is the world we live in. So got to create value at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I can speak to being an ambassador, and there's been a lot of conversations in behind the scenes too that the Tableau is still strong, and we're going to support the platform. And in fact, over the last few weeks, they've released some really new cool features. It's not a forgotten thing. So I think there was a lot of misunderstanding there. So if you just listen to the new conversations as we're heading into the next conference, I think things are like the optimism is there. Things will get better.
Love it. Y'all, let's not let the conversation end here. We'll see you in LinkedIn land. Huge thank you, as always, to our presenters, Anna Kay and Brandi, who had to take off. So thank you all so much for sharing your gifts and knowledge. Today was awesome. So super grateful. And then Anna, I'm going to thank our YouTube ninjas and all the folks behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. Tehran, always helping us out to make sure we can get this out to, if you weren't able to, or have a coworker who wasn't able to watch this is going to be available on YouTube. Thanks to Tehran. And when we come back with Kahoot, Nathan and I will bring that one back eventually here. I think lately we've just trying to cut it short and like make your time valuable, but I think we're all just ready to network in person. What do you think? And then we love having Kelly and Rasta behind the scenes, the Tableau ninjas behind the scenes who are trying to make this happen and pull this off. So those of us who are the TUG leaders don't have to do as much work and running around. And then there's Jen, who isn't here today with us, who normally is. She is the one doing the work behind the scenes, the heavy lifting, to the point that I'm like, what am I supposed to do right now? Where's Jen? So thank you guys. Anna just linked you to her workbook in Tableau Public, if that's in chat. And well, I think that's all we got. Anything else from
Grateful for y'all. Can't wait to hopefully see you in person in March. See you back virtually in February. If you're going to make it to the Tableau conference, give us a heads up. And we'll see you all soon.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Anna.
Bye.
Bye, Nelson.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.